Happy Tornado Tuesday! Today is March 4th, 2025, and this is your U.S. Tornado Forecast, a weekly look at tornado activity across the United States. I'm meteorologist Andrew Pritchard, and I run the SkyDrama.net blog and this YouTube channel. If you're new here, I'm both a meteorologist and storm chaser with a couple decades of experience forecasting tornadoes, and simultaneously just some guy on the internet thinking out loud about tornadoes once a week, and you are ultimately responsible for any decisions you make based off of this video. Now let's talk tornadoes. We'll start off this video by taking a look at last week's forecast map. I was highlighting two areas. The first one was a low risk for an isolated tornado in the Central Valley of California on Friday, February 28th. That risk certainly did not materialize. The other one, though, was a larger area spanning from the southern plains into the southeastern U.S. here Tuesday and Wednesday, March 4th and 5th. That's today and tomorrow, and that's certainly something that we have seen materialize here. We've got a large area that's undergoing a broad area of showers and storms with an enhanced risk for severe weather across parts of the lower Mississippi Valley, parts of the Mississippi Delta region today, and that risk is going to shift off across the southeastern U.S. tomorrow. So we'll start off looking at severe weather reports from the day yesterday. Again, we had some significant wind damage, some large hail, and a couple of tornadoes. I've seen some damage coming out of these areas as well, and I wanted to go back and kind of just review what happened during the overnight hours. This was kind of around 5:15 a.m. We had a QLCS tornado impact the Ada, Oklahoma area. We can take a look back at the radar image here. Again, this is a linear storm complex that developed, but you can make out a little area of rotation here, a little pocket. Let me go ahead and get it here. The velocity on the right side, again, you can see the strong winds coming from west to east with that line of storms. You had the southeasterly flow out ahead of those storms, and where you see the bright colors here is where we had a little bit of circulation. So again, you can make out kind of the individual echoes here, some of the stronger storms. It's not necessarily a squall line so much as it's just kind of a broken line of strong storms here and a couple of quasi supercell structures. There's even another little area spinning up just south of here. If I kind of just take this forward, you can see maybe you might expect to see some damage on Highway 3 kind of north of the Stonewall area as well. We'll play this out. You can watch that circulation continue off to the north, and then we also down in kind of the North Texas area, we had some tornadoes reported with this QLCS system that came through as well in the Irving area. And I found some damage on social media. Adam Lucio had a couple of photos here in Lewisville, Texas from a QLCS tornado. It looks like we had a manufacturing facility here, or maybe a shipping warehouse that was hit by a tornado here associated with this line of storms. You can see some of the damage there from the roofing material, some of the insulation stuck in the fences here. This is a risk that's going to continue over the next 48 hours or so. We again have tornado watches in effect across the southern plains, parts of the lower Mississippi Valley getting into the Delta with that enhanced risk, and that risk continues tomorrow off to the east. So let's just look at a couple things that are ongoing right now. Again, we have that tornado watch in effect across parts of southern Arkansas, down into Louisiana, parts of eastern Texas. We've got that squall line along and ahead of the front that continues to move off to the east. This is a rather new watch. Looks like this one is going to be in effect until 3 p.m. Central Time. We'll go ahead and take a look at the latest discussion here as well. And again, this is the corridor here where we've got the best overlap of that strong wind shear, the low-level jet feeding out of the south over the Gulf of Mexico. We've got that strong wave coming in from the west. We'll look at all this in a moment. And then the ongoing line of showers and storms. And over time, the unstable area, that warm sector, is going to kind of get pinched, and that's why that risk doesn't continue straight west to east. We kind of see that trailing off to the south and to the east. Now, tomorrow's outlook, we've got that enhanced risk in place across parts of the southeastern U.S., the mid-Atlantic. This is a wind-driven enhanced risk, just a 5% probability area here on the tornado map across parts of the Carolinas into portions of Virginia. So let's look at the map for the next week. We're looking at the U.S. tornado forecast for March 4th through the 11th. I'm highlighting a couple of areas. The first one is that ongoing risk Tuesday and Wednesday, March 4th and 5th. The highest confidence areas where we have those storms ongoing right now, moving out of Oklahoma and Texas into the parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, and eventually into Mississippi, maybe southern portions of Alabama. The risk is going to fade as we get into the overnight hours and then kind of resume tomorrow across portions of the southeast from Georgia into the Carolinas, southern portions of Virginia. We have a couple of systems that will make their way through the central and southern U.S. over the next 7 days or so. A lot of these are kind of whiffs when it comes to organized severe storms and that risk for a couple of tornadoes. I do think we have a weekend risk, though, that's going to hug the Gulf, kind of from Houston over toward the Florida Peninsula on Saturday and Sunday. That would be March 8th and 9th. Now let's kind of dive into the forecast. We're going to start with today's risk, the risk over the next 36 to 48 hours, then we'll talk about the next 7 days overall. We'll jump into the forecast then. We'll start with the 12Z herd. It came out here Tuesday morning. It's got a good handle on that line of storms pushing out of southern Arkansas into Louisiana and eastern portions of Texas this morning. So get into the afternoon and evening hours. We'll look for this line of storms to move through portions of Mississippi, eventually into Alabama, and perhaps into Georgia on a weakening trend as we get into the overnight hours. We got that risk for a couple of strong tornadoes as the line moves through this region right here, as the instability kind of comes up to meet the line. Again, right now, the environment out ahead of this line of storms is quite stable. We're talking about dew points that are only in the low to middle 50s across the region, but with that very strong low-level jet, we can see that here with the, we'll jump over to the RAP model. Take a look at that low-level jet exploding across the region here as we go through the late afternoon into the evening hours. We're talking about anywhere from, 40 knots up to 80 knots here as you span just south of the Gulf all the way into the core of the low-level jet, which is strongest as you get up into parts of the Mid-South. But we're looking for that combination, of that strong low-level jet, the upper-level support here, the upper-level lift. Here comes that wave at 500 millibars. You got really good upper-level lift here across the target area, the severe weather risk area. And then we just kind of wait for the moisture to meet it. So it's a rather narrow, kind of pinched warm sector here. So this is not one where we've got the overlap of, wind shear with a broad, volatile warm sector. But it's certainly, supportive of a couple of intense storms. Certainly going to be supportive of getting a couple of these storms rotating and getting, some tornadoes going on across this corridor. So we can kind of just cherry pick a sounding here from the sweet spot as we get to about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock Central Time here on Tuesday evening. Let this kind of load here. And so this is what you got. Obviously the wind field's extremely supportive, this big loopy hodograph, really nice hodograph that supports supercell thunderstorms, long-lived, organized severe weather. But then you come down here and you look at this, we've got a really saturated, soggy sounding here. And when you're talking about tornadoes, you really want to have some fat cape, to be kind of casual about it down here in the lower levels. And you don't have that. You've got this warm sector that's both pinched spatially, as we just looked at some of these maps, and the sounding here is pinched as well. You got plenty of instability here in the upper levels. It's going to be supporting a lot of thunderstorm activity. These storms should be severe in a lot of areas. We've got the wind shear to support that. Organized storms, upper level instability that supports, the severity of those storms. But down here, as I'm looking at that sweet spot for, good lapse rates, good level cape to kind of get those mesocyclones cranking, get some tornado genesis going down here. It's not really there. So this is going to have to be kind of dynamically driven, just by the wind fields here, which certainly it's possible. Again, we've already seen some of these QLCS spin-ups kind of within the line of thunderstorms, but I think that's largely what we're going to be looking at. I mean, there's some opportunity to get a supercell or two going in the warm sector out here, out ahead of this. I certainly don't want to discount that, but it's not the setup that I would really, kind of count on that. I'll flip back and forth. Let's look at the NAM model, the 12Z run here again. This is that open warm sector you'd be looking for, volatility in the thermodynamics here, in the, moisture profile and that low-level cape profile right across this region, and you don't have it. So the ingredients are there to produce this, squall line. It's going to have a risk for, pockets of significant wind damage there. It's also going to have that potential for little kinks within the line where we're going to have some tornadoes. And, in some of the cases here, this damage across portions of Texas and in the Ada, Oklahoma area is certainly not, nothing. We're talking about tornadoes that maybe have caused some EF1, EF2 damage here. So I don't want to discount the threat here across this region, and certainly the Storm Prediction Center is not doing that. They've got this enhanced risk down there, and they've got that 10% hatched risk area for tornadoes, some of which could be significant across this region from southern Arkansas into northern Louisiana, across parts of Mississippi, and then eventually southwestern portions of Alabama. But as that line moves east, again, the warm sector it kind of fades. So kind of lose that combination where we've got the hodographs, you have the wind field. That's not going to be a problem with this storm system, but we just don't have you don't have a widespread volatile warm sector that really supports that widespread volatility. So instead, it's just going to be the dynamics here kind of right along that front with that severe squall line moving from west to east across the region, maybe some embedded tornadoes kind of within that. And then as we talk about the risk getting eastward into the southeastern U.S. tomorrow, it's really pretty similar. Again, I mentioned that risk fades, so this is not a squall line that's going to likely march from Arkansas and Louisiana with nonstop severe weather and tornadoes across Alabama and into Georgia. There's likely going to be a lull here as these storms run out of gas, getting into the after dark hours here, kind of after 9 p.m. toward midnight central is when I think we'll kind of transition from severe mode into just rain with some embedded thunderstorms, maybe some gusty winds there. And then we'll look for that severe risk to kind of ramp up potentially across parts of eastern Georgia into southern Virginia, here kind of spanning the Carolinas late in the day tomorrow. But again, this is more of a wind risk as this line of storms pushes through the area, gets out of there by the time we get to the late afternoon into the evening hours. So that's kind of your next 48 hours. We can take kind of a wider look at the pattern overall here and talk about where it's going. Kind of briefly mentioned, we do have that risk for maybe some tornado activity. Low confidence here hugging the Gulf of Mexico as we go through the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, March 8th and 9th. So let's kind of talk about what that looks like. Now, I jumped over here to the Colorado State Machine Learning Probability Prediction webpage here. These severe weather forecasts are kind of fun to look at here. They're, not gospel, but they can do a good job of highlighting some areas, especially this time of year. Early in the season, we've got these big, synoptically impressive storm systems making their way through the area. So today, we're highlighting that risk for tornadoes highest across parts of Louisiana into southwestern portions of Mississippi. Over the next 24 hours, that risk for, damaging winds pretty high across central portions of Mississippi, trailing off as we get into Alabama. That day 2 risk, again, moving off to the east, mid-Atlantic into the southeastern U.S. And then as we look at the kind of, days 3 through 8, I'm picking out a couple areas here. And now this is what I mean by this is not gospel. So kind of just a quick table setter here. So we know that we've got this risk today, tomorrow. Going to be quiet Thursday. I noticed still a low risk here across parts of the lower Mississippi Valley into the southern plains. As we get into Friday, Saturday, this bigger risk across the southeastern U.S. Sunday, this shifts off across the southeast, off the Atlantic. And then we get this another risk here, Tuesday, as we get into March 11th. Looking at a risk of maybe some organized severe storms across parts of the central United States, getting into the Midwest. So here's, we kind of set the table here. It looks like we've got this risk that kind of ramps back up potentially this weekend and then early next week across parts of the central and southern United States. So let's jump in. Let's take a look at it. What's the jet stream look like today? We'll go ahead and jump down here to 300 millibar. We'll jump to the North American view. Here's the big trough making its way in here. A lot of upper level lift. Again, developing an area of low pressure right here. Strong low level jet. Moisture being drawn north from the Gulf of Mexico. That sets the stage for your organized severe weather. This wave pushes off to the east as we get into Wednesday. But, by the time we get to peak heating on Wednesday, this wave is it's matured. It's moving on east. And the best area is going to be moving offshore across the Atlantic Ocean as we get into the Wednesday evening time frame. Now here comes the next couple of waves. We highlighted an area on Friday. I want to zoom back in here. It's kind of, if I jump back to the CSU page, that Friday area is here, kind of from southern Illinois down across Louisiana, parts of eastern Texas. So that would be kind of right here. Makes a little sense. We've got some strong flow across the region, a trough kind of lagging back toward the west. But you start diving deeper, this is not a real great look. You got this area of low pressure that ejects across the central and southern plains on Thursday night into Friday morning. Really gets kind of sheared apart, loses its organization as we get into Friday. And as we jump back over and look at, do we have any juice? It's not the worst thing in the world if we have a disorganized wave. If it's later in the season and we've got a volatile environment out ahead of it, it's not what we have here though. If I kind of just jump back here, let's just look at the moisture table. The moisture forecast here, set the table is what I was trying to say. Just getting started here Tuesday. So here's all the moisture being fed north into today's storm system. Again, you see the drier air. Again, we had a lead wave here that kind of, scoured the environment out here. So it's not an environment that has had, volatile deep moisture in place for several days. We're just kind of tugging it northward as this wave moves through the region. You see all the dry air coming on the backside. Got those red flag warnings in effect across New Mexico and Texas today. It's windy and dry in those areas. Look for that moisture being drawn northward. Again, high pressure across the Atlantic, so we've got that feed being drawn northward. We've got the low pressure to the west, so get that nice deep moisture kind of sandwiched right in the middle there as I kind of rock back and forth. But this is mid-afternoon, about 2-3 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon, and the drier, colder air is already pushing in. It's going to be kind of running out of real estate, so to speak, as we get into what would be kind of peak timing of that event Wednesday evening. So now we have a ton of dry air in place. So we're getting into Thursday morning. All of the moisture has been scoured way down here to the Caribbean. So this is, taking the moisture with it. Very common with these big early season systems, big powerful cold front, real strong flow coming in on the backside. We really kind of wipe the environment clean, which is not something that's so common as we get into the later part of the season. Again, May and June, when the trough comes through, a little shortwave, we're not scouring the entirety of the central, southern, and eastern U.S., of any moisture. So here's Friday. This is getting into the early morning hours Friday, kind of sunrise on Friday. This would be mid-morning, now midday on Friday. So we've got this wave coming in. We've got, upper level flow that's kind of screaming out of the west-southwest. We've got a, decreasingly organized surface reflection and low-level jet here. And then the moisture, we've got a little bit here down across parts of East Texas, getting into Louisiana, but up closer to, parts of southern Illinois. This is just kind of a bit of a sagging front with really marginal moisture in front of it. So looking at the precipitation forecast here, not a whole lot forecast. It's a pretty dry passage of the system. Again, it's moisture starved and it's not really properly aligned here within the flow to get a big tug of deep moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. So a little snow on the north side, maybe a couple of showers associated with this one. And then, as we get deeper into maybe the Saturday time frame, we're going to get another wave that comes out. So there's your Friday look. Again, kind of highlighting a low risk here, but I would just put an X through this. I do not expect any tornado activity on Friday. What I did highlight, though, was an area here as we get into the weekend. Again, Saturday, Sunday, March 8th and 9th. So here comes that out of the southwest. This will be early Saturday morning. This is that wave kind of coming out of the desert southwest. We'll look at the mid-level reflection there. So here's 500 millibars. Again, here's the big trough. The problem here, though, is the background state is not all that supportive of getting everything to come together, if I can just kind of use that loosely. So here's what I mean. Let's zoom out. Let's look at North America. Really, the whole pattern here is a ridge west with a big trough east. This is the remnants of the system that's moving through early this week. We see it kind of wrap up with another area of low pressure across the Hudson Bay. So we got this big trough, this big deep area of low pressure across the Great Lakes. So the kind of prevailing flow coming around the trough in the Gulf of Alaska, over the top of the ridge in the western U.S., and then down around the base of the trough here in the Great Lakes over the northeast. So we've got this northwest flow with kind of converging flow here out ahead of this trough that's kind of cut off from the flow. It's not a big trough oriented across the western United States. It's just kind of getting pinched off beneath the ridge here. So we've got a narrow, really compact area that could be supportive. If we just kind of go back and look at the actual winds here, we'll zoom back into the U.S. view and kind of take it back to, let's say, kind of Saturday morning, midday Saturday, getting into Saturday evening. So we certainly have this trough out here, but it is very positively oriented. Again, kind of from southwest to northeast, you can draw a line here through the axis of that trough, positively tilted. A lot of flow here, but with this positive tilt, you don't get a really tightly wound surface low pressure area either. So again, look at this. You go down to the low level jet, 850. Here's 925 millibars. Let's go ahead and look at the surface winds here. You're not getting a big spun up area of low pressure like you are today. Here's today. Let's look at the difference. Here's the upper level wave. Let's get it to load here. Again, big negative tilt, really compact wave. You see the lines here are fanning out, kind of spreading out. This is upper level divergence. That means the winds here are speeding up and they're spreading out really quickly. So when we do that, we create a void in the middle and upper levels of the atmosphere. We have to fill that void somehow. So we bring air from the surface, it rises, we get rising motion, we develop that surface cyclone. Now we just kind of jump back to, the low level winds. Again, this is today, this is March 4th. Here's that area of low pressure. Let's look at the low level jet associated with that. It's, screaming from south to north off the Gulf of Mexico, bringing that deep moisture northward. Let's look at the system then again this weekend. Let's kind of jump back out here. Let's take it into the Saturday time frame. Again, positively tilted. You don't have those lines kind of fanning out quite so dramatically. It's just, you got this ridge west, trough east pattern, so you get convergence. It's not a big trough ejecting in the same fashion at all. So again, surface winds, it's a completely different story. You do kind of get A little surface low kind of here across South Texas. You can kind of make out the warm front kind of right here. I'll go ahead and look at the moisture here. The dew points should see deeper moisture kind of, right along the Gulf Coast. And then if I just kind of, take this forward through the rest of this forecast period, you get a broad area of rain and some thunderstorms here. But you don't have the combination of, ingredients here to support really organized severe weather. We're talking about instability that's, on the low to moderate, range, but it's hugging the Gulf of Mexico here. So we're really hugging the Gulf. This is Tuesday or Saturday afternoon and evening, March 8th. This will take it into Sunday, March 9th. You see the system continue west to east, making its way into the Florida Peninsula, maybe the Florida Panhandle with that risk for some thunderstorm activity on Sunday, March 9th. We'll look at this here. This is the 6Z run. Let's go ahead and jump back. We'll look at the 12Z run. Pretty consistent with this one. So here you go. Saturday, low risk for some storms. I mean, this looks like maybe it could be a marginal, slight risk day, but I would, if we're talking 2 to 5% at the most tornado probabilities here, unless we see some big changes in the background state and the way this wave ejects. Right now, it is a bit of a rainmaker, but not a volatile severe weather outbreak producer here. Again, talking about the March 8th and 9th, Saturday and Sunday wave. We'll watch for this one to maybe bring a chance for showers and storms, that risk for severe weather across Florida Sunday, perhaps into Monday. And then we get a bit of a lull. This is your Monday, March 10th. And then I mentioned here, getting into the middle part of next week, we do have another area of low pressure to watch for, kind of jumping around whether it makes its way in March 12th, March 13th, that Tuesday to Wednesday, time range. You're seeing an area of low pressure here across central Iowa. We're getting into, evening, not seeing a whole lot in the way of thunderstorm activity across the region here with this area of low pressure. So we can kind of hypothesize why that may be. My first guess is, we just talked in depth about Saturday, Sunday, March 8th and 9th. With a wave running across the Gulf Coast with, very little moisture available to it anywhere north of the coast of the Gulf. This system then makes its way through Saturday, Sunday, March 8th and 9th. So we only really have Monday and Tuesday to get the moisture back north from the Gulf of Mexico. And as it looks right here, Wednesday, March 12th, getting into the evening hours when you would otherwise expect a lot of showers and storms ongoing with this storm, I'm guessing it's moisture starved. So let's go ahead and we'll look at the dew points. This would be, again, Wednesday. There you have it. You can see the pull from the low-level jet. You can see that, advection of warm, moist air, certainly feeding into the area of low pressure. You can make out the frontal boundary here. This would be the kind of cold front, potentially the dry line here. So you would expect showers and storms ongoing across this area, but instead dew points are kind of in the 40s to maybe getting up to 50 degrees. So this is a moisture-starved storm system, and it's exactly what we just kind of hypothesized. Again, Saturday, Sunday, March 8th and 9th. The deep moisture is being taken even further away from the Gulf of Mexico. So now here's the day before. This is kind of, Monday, March 10th. Dew points are in the 30s across much of the central U.S. The low-level jet starts going. I bet if I jump over here, we'll see a good low-level jet. This is not such a problem with the wind field as it is the moisture. So here you go. March 10th and 11th. Start to get that low-level jet going. This would take deep moisture northward, but it's just not enough time. You really would want to see this response well in advance of that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, March 11th, 12th, 13th wave if you were going to see deep moisture in place. This one's going to take moisture with it too. Again, this is very common this time of year. You get these big wound-up storm systems. They're easy to see in advance, so that, we like that. It's easy to talk about them in advance, but you can see some of the issues here. We get these big crashing cold fronts every 3 to 5 days that take the moisture with it. This is March 13th now. This is that midweek storm system. You take all the Gulf moisture, you shove it south down toward the Caribbean. Now we get another system here coming in March 14th and 15th, next weekend. You see the swirl of that area of low pressure. You see the moisture trying to be drawn northward, but you only get like a day or two to draw that moisture northward. And so you get some of these systems are just moisture starved. So the pattern right now is extremely active, but it's tough to find a system like the one we have right now, which really has all the ingredients coming together, at least for a 12 to 24 hour period. We did talk in depth though about the problems even this system has. So let's finish up this video with a quick rundown of the next 15 days. We'll do it verbatim from the European model here. Again, Tuesday, we've got this squall line moving from Arkansas and Louisiana into parts of Mississippi, eventually into Alabama, before running out of steam during the overnight hours tonight. During the day on Wednesday, March 5th, I expect at least scattered severe storms, predominantly producing damaging winds, but a couple of tornadoes possible from southern Virginia through the Carolinas into parts of eastern Georgia, maybe a couple severe storms across the Florida Peninsula along the tail end of that cold front Wednesday evening into early Wednesday night before the system makes its way off across the Atlantic Ocean. We'll see a bit of a lull here. An area of low pressure makes its way through parts of the mid-Mississippi Valley, the lower Mississippi Valley, across the Ohio Valley on Friday, March 8th. Moisture-starved, does not bring a tornado risk with it. We then watch an area of low pressure run across the Gulf Coast, bringing a very low risk for severe storms, maybe a tornado or two to parts of coastal Texas, across the Gulf Coast into eventually Florida as we get to Sunday, March 9th. I apologize if I've said May more than once in this video. I am really trying to stay grounded here in the month of March. We get a lull Monday. We get that midweek system next week. We'll have time to talk about it. My next update will be Tuesday, March 11th. We'll likely be talking about the system that makes its way through midweek. Very low risk for some severe weather. Right now looking like a moisture-starved storm system here mid next week. And then we'll talk about another area of low pressure, another organized storm system. Pretty high confidence with this one, even though we're talking about 11 to 12 days out into the future. There's good confidence with this one, with the ensembles as well as we get into kind of mid-month next weekend. Again, will this one have the juice? Will it have everything to produce organized severe weather? We'll talk about that next week. That would be Tuesday, March 11th. I appreciate you sticking with me here for another video. If this one's felt a little bit herky-jerky, I have had to kind of come at it and take bites out of it throughout the morning. I've had a pretty busy schedule, but I didn't want to miss this one. We're talking about a lot of ongoing severe weather. We do have another low risk for some organized storms and maybe a couple of tornadoes across the Gulf Coast this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, March 8th and 9th. And then as I come to you next week, Tuesday, March 11th, I do think we'll be talking about at least a low risk for some tornadoes across parts of maybe the Ohio Valley, back across the southeast, some familiar areas here we're going to be talking about, I think, over the next 2 to 3 weeks, if not more, as we head into the beginning of tornado season in 2025. So again, that's all I've got for you today. As always, you can find more over at skydrama.net, and you're always welcome to poke around the channel to scratch that severe weather itch.